right here. And
Pooler, Georgia.
I'm the man. Mine! Woo!
Casey the Beef Kringen, how about that new intro? That guy, Zach Locks Parker, is taking his annual vacation. So we're rolling without Zach today, and here is the intro. We're doing that. Now we're doing the intro. How about that?
This is the Sluggo, slant and go.
It's episode 77. I still haven't figured out how to start this dang show yet, but we were sitting here chit-chatting, and I looked up and like 10 minutes before something. But I'll edit that part for the podcast version, listened to by millions, downloaded by everybody from the Secretary of State to the Secretary of your office. I don't know. Hey, you're back living the island life this week.
Yeah, the traveling has kind of quelled for right this moment, but new job, new life, new world. It's a wonderful thing. Hello to Kevron Harris. Always good to see you, sir. Thanks for checking in. But we're back for this week. I do have some work travel coming up, surprisingly. This COVID thing hasn't quelled that so much currently, but you never know where that's going. But yeah, excited to be back home, excited to be talking to you, excited that Lox isn't here. Wait, that wasn't right.
We're gonna talk Lox. He's been crushing me on the text machine, so we're gonna be talking Lox coming up. Kevron, as Beef said, thank you for chiming in. You're typically first. We appreciate that. I was wondering if Kevron was going to check in tonight, and he certainly did. Hey, Beef, you know you're old. There's two ways to tell when you're old, right? One of them is when you go to sleep before New Year's, which we kind of talked about last week. I think Lox has done that every year since 2001. But the other one happened to me this week. We had a little weather, not like last year so far anyway, but we had a little weather. And I said, man, let me check out the Weather Channel. And I knew the number. I knew what channel the Weather Channel was. I didn't have to look it up or search. I was like, dang, I'm old. When you know the Weather Channel, it's like channel 362. See, you know you're old when you know the Weather Channel. Weather Channel.
Yeah, God forbid you were to change cable providers, and you would be pissed. I've been pissed before, going, no, it's not 206. Where's ESPN? It's 206.
Yes,
no,
206.
It's like 48 now. So yeah, you know,
it is weird. And let me tell you what I discovered last night. Speaking of old. Last year, I could watch Clemson on, one of the streaming services, Amazon or what's the other one, Hulu, or one of those, one of the other ones. I could watch it on there. This year, through ESPN. This year, I was getting the boot, right? I couldn't do it. It said I was blacked out, so I had to watch it on my phone. I'm like, why am I blacked out on the TV? But I can watch it on the phone. It took me a year to figure it out, but it hit me last night. I noticed in the corner of the TV that said it was blacked out, it had a little Bally Sports on there, right? And I get Bally Sports here because of the Spurs, and it was Sports Southwest. Fox Southwest went to Bally Sports. It's all that big high finance stuff you and I don't understand. But anyway, I had it on regular TV and didn't know it, and I'm looking at it on the phone for like a year. And I finally figured it out last night. So I said, well, let me go see if the Clemson NC State game on Saturday is on this thing. It's on 4 different channels. So I don't understand. I don't know. That high finance and business deals, and this channel's being bought by that channel, and you can't keep up with the crap, especially when you're old. So anyway, that's my old people rant for today.
Mr. Yarber, good to see you, pal. Always good to see you. Hope you're feeling better.
Good evening, Mr. Yarber, as Beef calls you. Stay tuned because we'll have a guest appearance that you may be interested in a little while. Hey, Beef, Dabo got Cheez-Its dumped on him, which is preferable to mayonnaise in my book. I like mayonnaise, just not on me. in me is good. Probably not as much as lox, but I enjoy some good mayonnaise. But Clemson won the Cheez-Its Bowl. Cheez-It Bowl? Is it plural? Is it Cheez-Its Bowl? And kind of weird fashion like the other 12 games this year. Just kind of weird and wild, and field goals in the first half and crazy touchdowns in the second half. They pulled it out. Takeaways, thoughts, more of the same? What'd you get from the Cheez-It Bowl?
Yeah, I thought that once Clemson went up 20-3 or whatever it may have been, 20-7, 20-6, one of those, I immediately thought, and this is probably my fault, that this game wasn't over yet. Like that it felt like Iowa State was going to have a chance at the end to have a drive. And lo and behold, it was the same story. You allow teams to come back, and it was a good Iowa State team. Their defense did give us a little bit of fits, couldn't necessarily run the ball as well as we did against South Carolina, and we meaning Clemson. But, I thought the defense was fantastic. That was a big concern for people, for Clemson fans around the country that were worried that when Venables left, the defense went with him. I think we saw a lot of the same, even some different little niches from Wes Goodwin and Mickey Kahn. I really like that. I actually thought the offensive play calling was good early. It's baffling because they had Dakari Collins over the middle on the slant routes early. And so I got excited. I said, all right, so they're going to use Davis Allen over the middle. They're going to use Dakari Collins in the slot. That fits. He wears number 3. It's going to kind of, roll right along with the Amari Rodgers feel. And then they went away from it again. Now, I understood they wanted to run first, but once you're up 20-3, those little outlets are there to get you the 7 yards. The stuff that Clemson fans saw with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, you and I have talked about it many times. Instead of going 2nd and 10, now you're at 2nd and 3. The layups. Now you're at 2nd and 3. So you have a whole playbook open at 2nd and 3. At 2nd and 10, you're going to be, that it's probably a passing down. The defense is going to pin their ears back. But, I thought I saw a lot of good things. Again, you start Will Sweeney at wide receiver, you have problems or attrition or injuries.
Yeah.
That hurts. I really like Bo Collins. I really like Dakari Collins. I wish they weren't the number 1 and 2. I think Bo could turn into the next guy. But they, as freshmen, I wish they weren't the number 1 and 2. I wish they were like, I don't know, Mike Williams when he came in, where he was kind of the 2 or 3.
Right.
Even like a Sharon Peak, where he was the 3. Like you have those 2 other studs. You have Hopkins, you have Watkins, and then you have Sharon Peak. Like I wish there were those 2 guys that ahead of them that weren't hurt. Saw great things on defense, and I know we'll get to some stuff that's happening with the defense later on. Overall, it was fine. It's like I wasn't worried about the game at all, and then the win was just kind of cool.
Number 10 on the season. So yeah, Chancey asked when they're going to start the Shiner Bach Bowl. They're not going to call it the bowl, Chancey. They're going to call it the Shiner Bach Fest or the Shiner Bach Battle. How about that? Or
right there live in Kyle, Texas.
Well, in Shiner, Texas, actually, I think. I don't know how big Shiner High School Stadium is. I think the town's about 1,200, 1,300 people. So, but they got a brewery. So, what the heck?
Perfect
Shiner,
size for MAC versus, I don't know.
Yeah.
FCS school.
Whatever. Louisiana. My takeaways. There are many reasons that Clemson ended up 10-3. During the text, I get emotional during the game, and I said some things about DJ that I semi-regret. Now, they weren't mean, or they were just opinions on Clemson's future with DJ as a quarterback. Nothing personal, just the way he plays quarterback. I don't regret, though, saying that, because I still feel that way to a certain extent, but part of me wants to give him, this year and see what happens in the spring. And I don't know, maybe part of that is that there's nobody behind him like Deshaun behind Cole Stout, right? Klubnik's coming in. He's a true freshman, number 1 quarterback in some services. I get it. I still think it's kind of taking a chance And there's a road game at Notre Dame next year too, so that'll be interesting to see who's number one quarterback by that time. But anyway, it's not all DJ's fault. You and I have talked about it over the season. Wide receivers drop passes. We saw Will Shipley do it again in the Cheez-It Bowl, a wide open pass that would have been a first down and maybe 15 or 20-yard gain. He dropped a very easy pass. The offensive line was not great. The receivers, as you talked about, they're good. They're good young players. When you were talking about Mike Williams, I caught passes because he didn't have to catch, 40, 50, 60, make the big plays. They're good. They're good young receivers, but they're not the guys that are getting 1,000 yards in the NFL right now. They're not T. Higgins. They're not Mike Williams. They're not Hunter Renfrow. I mean, can they get better and become really solid number ones? Yeah, but they're not, and they were forced to this year. That's tough. I think the line has always been average, and I'm writing about this for Seldom Used Reserve. I was going to get to this later, but when we'll talk about then. I've got an article I wrote. It's ready to go, come out tomorrow about all of this. The line has always been average, but you know what's different? The quarterback was mobile. The quarterback could get out of some of that and run for 30 yards. DJ, that's not his game. He stands there, and he's immobile for the most part. There's an occasional run. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Trevor outrunning Ohio State defenders for a 68-yard touchdown or whatever it is. That's what I'm talking about. That's the part that's missed on 3rd and 9 for you to get 12 or 14 or 15 yards. With the offensive line that Clemson has and has had, they need that quarterback. They don't need a statue, and I don't mean statue in a negative sense. They don't need a pocket passer, an NFL-type passer. They need Deshaun or Trevor, the way they're currently constructed with that offensive line, because they're not going to survive. Could they get better and maybe win 11 next year or 12? Sure, if he stops throwing interceptions the way he was. But what's going to happen when you get to the playoffs? What happens when you face Georgia in the playoffs, or Alabama, or pick your team? You're going to get crushed. I just think, for Clemson to be successful, they need a generational quarterback. And luckily we had 2 almost in a row with a year there with Kelly Bryant. And we saw what happened with that in the playoff game. They need a generational quarterback, and I have my doubts that DJ's that guy. I'm willing to give him the spring and give him some games next year, but then just like what happened with Deshaun and Cole Stout, it's time to move on, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you said it. I see a lot of people in the Twitterverse or in the social media saying that give Klubnik the job right off the bat. And my response to that, whether it's actually outward or even in my own head, is saying, when has a Dabo Sweeney led team done that? You had 2 generational talents in Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence back to back, just about like you said, with that year. But even so, Cole Stout was still the quarterback coming out of the spring and into the fall with Deshaun Watson, the all-world quarterback who we know and loved at Clemson. Then the same thing happens with Kelly Bryant. Kelly Bryant was the starter for that year. And then Kelly Bryant the next year with Trevor Lawrence. Kelly Bryant still had the job through the spring and into the fall for 4 games. And then they made the switch. So if that is to I just want to get out in front of it to Clemson fans. Like, you have to understand it's not going to be Klubnik's team, I think, regardless of how he performs in the spring. I think DJ still gets those 4 games to kind of figure it out, to see if they're actually going to need Klubnik to come in. And hopefully Cade can put on 20 pounds. I know everyone says that Deshaun was the same measurables. I still he was also hurt pretty often his first 2 years.
His freshman year, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you really want that same build coming in to take some heat, especially, like you said, Notre Dame on the road? That's going to be a tough one regardless.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's his team right off the bat.
I don't either. And I don't know the order of those games. The last time I looked, they haven't been the schedule, the complete order. The first couple are out there. But after that, they just have the team names and not the dates. So I don't think they've been set yet by the ACC. So I don't know if Notre Dame's the 3rd game or the 10th game, right? So who knows? But I think you're asking a whole lot of Cade Klubnik to put him in as the starting quarterback. That's, as you said, if you're not doing it with Deshaun and you're not doing it with Trevor, you're not going to do it with Cade unless you have no other choice. Let's see what we got. Brent June, he was hurt with a non-contact injury. More weight wouldn't make that less likely. Was it a non-contact injury? Didn't he break his wrist one time on a run where he got?
Who's
hit?
he talking about? He's talking about Deshaun, or is he talking?
I think he's talking
about
Deshaun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even the knee. I mean, he tore his ACL. You know, or
I think Brent has a good point. The knee injury was not contact, but the other one was, at least he was hit, as I remember, going out of bounds so long ago. I can't remember, but it's a valid point. But I don't, even if Deshaun didn't get hurt, I don't want a 186-pound quarterback running around back there being your franchise. And I'm a Klubnik guy. You know that. Nelson knows that. He's plays high school 10 miles from here, 15 miles from here. I go through there when I go to work. Occasionally, I go through that little part of town. So, John Chansey, I agree DJ starts the year, but I think Klubnik earns playing time like DW and T-Law. Notre Dame is early November. So they have some time before Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's November 5th.
Okay. That's good news. Back to the game you were talking about before the show. We're talking about the defense, and I think the defense was still elite. And even without Skalski, they did a good job. I was a little worried the first couple of plays with McGuire in there. It looked like, Iowa State was taking advantage of that. But he got his bearings right in Skalski coaching, and all of a sudden it got back to looking like the good defense again. Now, some luck is involved, right? A fumble. Mario Goodrich made a great play, and it just happened to roll that way behind the line. And behind the first down line, and the defense up, but who's to say they would have held anyway? So still a good defense, still elite. My concerns on the other side of the ball. What's your thoughts on the defense?
Yeah, I love the defense. And after a while, I was watching the game, and I thought McGuire was Skalski or even Spector, who obviously the 2 of the top 3 linebackers weren't playing. Skalski unfortunately broke his plantar fascia during the game, but you always feel bad about that. But I love the defense. And is there anyone in the country that helped their NFL value this year more than Mario Goodrich? Rio, it was just phenomenal, especially at the back half of the season. Even the play he made on the interception was fantastic. The punch out that he had on Purdy to cause that fumble at the end was just picture perfect. I went into the season, I'm probably on record saying that I was very concerned on the back end of the defense, and especially early on when Nolan Turner wasn't playing. I said, oh, God, we're going to be starting this number 1 kid. What the heck's his name? Mukuba from Texas. And then very quickly, I fell in love with him. And then very quickly, I fell in love with Andrew Booth, too, although we had a little trouble with Akizi from NC State, Emeka Akizi. Or I think that's his name, and even the very good wide receiver, Litnikoff Award winner from Pitt as well. But other than that, they were just fantastic all season long. I love the back end of the defense. I think they're still going to be okay, even with the loss of presumably Booth and Goodrich. I think with Makuba coming back and some young guys hopefully taking the step, I still think the back end's going to be fine. Linebackers are going to be fine, and obviously the strength of this Clemson defense has always been that defensive front, and they're going to be fine as well. More on that in a second.
John Chansey, this defense has a chance to be even better next season. Only 2-step back could be at corner. Yep. I think I tend to agree anyway with that assessment from Chansey there. There is a ton of news. Casey, last week when we talked, I was wondering, would we have anything to talk about this week? We're kind of going week to week with it right now. Last year, we probably wouldn't have anything to talk about, maybe this week, but not next week. Clemson's all over the news. Every podcast I listen to has got a Clemson segment. Right before we got on, I was listening to 45 minutes of Ari Wasserman saying Clemson's done. I'm paraphrasing there. in the recruiting world, because Cristobal's at Miami and Mac is reeling in everybody at North Carolina, taken away from Dabo's general stomping grounds. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but if you ever listen to that podcast, he's not a fan of what's happening at Clemson right now. And, I certainly understand that to some degree. Obviously, my loyalties lie in a different place than his, but I get it. And just when you think it's going to be a quiet week and all the coaching turmoil and turnover is done, Todd Bates leaves for Oklahoma. Oklahoma starts sending out graphics. And then Clemson, I won't say retaliates. That's probably too strong of a word. Response, I should say. Clemson responds. So there's a social media war going on between Clemson and Oklahoma. And then the Tigers announce one of your friends. This is the coaching staff of Casey's friends now. This is two, right? Nick Easton at the defensive line coach. And initially, it's like everybody is relieved, and I'm not sure if that's because he's a Clemson guy, good coach, NFL background. I'm not sure what's going on. You know him obviously better than I do. So give us your thoughts on all that. Bates leaving, social media war, and Nick Easton being hired.
Yeah, I think our friend Tiger commenter on Twitter, who we know, Chris, said it perfectly. It was a clap back. Clemson clapped back at Oklahoma, and they added the sack that they had against Iowa State and the couple tackles for loss that they had in that game as well. So I thought that was pretty well done. As far as Bates leaving, I was kind of perturbed and looking at it, just wondering what the heck happened between the bowl game and yesterday. I really feel like, it was it finally hit me that something negative was happening. And I was a little nervous as a Clemson fan. And then today, when it started coming out, almost immediately, actually, Larry Williams from Tiger Illustrated put out that the first call was going to be to Nick Easton, who was the defensive line coach at Auburn for the last couple of years before that in the NFL. And so I said that would be a home run hire. Now, you joked saying my friends, but these are my contemporaries while I was at Clemson. Brandon Streeter lived in the dorm with us, Nick Easton as well, different years. But I think Nick Easton is a home run hire. He is probably the most likable human being on the planet. And that I mean that truly. He is one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. And then I was telling you before the show, when you'd see him on Saturdays, you're like, from defensive end, you're like, he's just nasty. Yeah, he works his hands. He was just nasty. And then you'd see him afterwards with this big, beautiful baby face smile. And you're just like, was that you, 98 on the field? I love it because of his pedigree. I love it because he wants to be at Clemson, obviously, because he just got a raise at Auburn. He was in the SEC, and now he's coming back home to Clemson. He wasn't coached by Dabo. He wasn't there probably when Dabo. He wasn't there when Dabo was there. So they've obviously built some sort of rapport and bringing him back to Clemson. I just think someone said he makes 3 stars into beasts at Auburn on the defensive front. I think he's just going to really resonate with kids. I think he's going to really resonate with their parents. I think his knowledge, his experience. You're bringing another NFL guy to this staff. You got Mike Reed, who's NFL guy. You got Lemansky Hall, who is an NFL guy. Like the defensive side, Wes Goodwin was an NFL guy. You got all these guys with this pedigree, and they want to be at Clemson. I said to somebody earlier today, Todd who, because I don't even remember him anymore because Nick Easton is in Clemson, and I am so excited for it.
It took one whole day for you to forget Todd Bates and get over it. Chancey says Beef should be able to get that press pass now, right? I've already been on him, John. We talked about this when Streeter got hired, or promoted, actually. So we have been talking about the press pass. I think we're over. How many home games were there? Over 6 or whatever.
6 or 7.
So I was glad to see that today because things were looking pretty bleak. But Nick Easton coming home to Clemson is a great story. And what this tells me, what this shows me, again, this turned around in a day. Dabo has a plan, right? a smart manager, and I talked about management tactics last week about you've got to promote from within, because if you don't, people will leave. And that's part of the reason people stay, is because they know they're going to get promoted eventually. And they're willing to work and take lower pay for a while if they know they're going to get promoted. If they continue to get passed over, people think that's what happened with Todd Bates. He moved on. So there's a lesson in there. Dabo's getting blasted when he hires from within, and when he doesn't hire from within, right? When he hired from within Wes Goodwin, they blasted him. When he didn't hire Todd Bates from within, he gets blasted for that. That's the life of Dabo. But in general, you need to hire, from within. And I lost my train of thought where I was going with some great management talk there, but it really doesn't matter. KJ Henry, another big good news for Clemson. So it hasn't been all bad this week. It's been pretty good. And KJ Henry has decided to return next season. That made me happy.
Yeah, and I put on Twitter he's going to earn his PhD before he leaves, because the man already has. He's already got a master's and a bachelor's. I mean, what's he going to do? What's he going to study next fall? It's just crazy, and I think that's a huge lift from a leadership standpoint. I think it's a huge lift from a skill standpoint. He showed glimpses this year of just being really, really good. He's going to help those younger guys, and plus you get Tyler Davis and hopefully a healthy Brian Bresee and some of the young guys that are coming through. That defensive front is going to not be a worry in the world. I love the fact that KJ Henry is coming back for another year. He loves it. His parents love it. And Clemson fans must love it too, because it's just a great get.
Wasn't it Matt Leinart who came back when he came back for his senior year? He had like one class. It was like, I don't remember, dancing, ballet, not ballet, or some kind of dancing class.
Like ballroom dancing, I think.
Ballet. Ballet would have been better. That would have been a better story. But and we talked about this earlier, there's been lots of talk about Clemson on podcast and TV. For a team that didn't make the playoff, there's been a lot of words written, spoken, and screamed about Clemson, good and bad, over the last. It's just fascinating, right? You would think they're not in the playoff. They're down a little bit in the recruiting. They lost 4 recruits. Let's talk about some other stuff. But Clemson is all over the college football landscape. So people are fascinated. And I think part of it, more than part of it, a good chunk of it is Dabo. Half people want to see him fail. Half the people want to see him succeed. And everybody's kind of wondering, where are we going with this? Is this the turning point down, or is he going to be able to get them back up? Fascinating stuff. So as I said, I thought we were going to have some off weeks here where we didn't have much to talk about. It hadn't happened so far. We'll see. We'll see it up in the next few weeks. Okay, random bowl thoughts. Rose Bowl was completely nuts. I think Jackson Smith how do you say the name? I think he just scored again. Njiba. Anyway, he scored again. He had 347 yards, 14 catches, or 3 touchdowns. It was crazy nuts. What a wild and woolly game. I know our friend of the show, Michael Palkovich, was crying in his green beer after Notre Dame blew a huge lead against Oklahoma State. Notre Dame is, we talked about this before. Palk asked me, when's Notre Dame going to get some recognition? When are they going to be recognized? And I said, when they win a playoff game. And he agreed with that, to his credit. He agreed. He said, yep, agree. But now, after that bowl game loss, we find out that Notre Dame is 0-8 in BCS in year 6 games. The most losses without a win of any team. So Notre Dame still hasn't won that big game. Maybe Brian Kelly had a point, right? I'm just saying, have to go somewhere else to win a title, which we know is not true. Notre Dame's got 150 of them. Oklahoma beats Oregon, but Caleb Williams enters the transfer portal. Downstream effects, Dylan Gabriel, who was going to class at UCLA the next day, drops UCLA and goes to Oklahoma. Then Oklahoma sends out, this is like Peyton plays college football these days. Then Oklahoma sends out a statement about all the great things they can do for Caleb Williams. And me and you were like, ooh, that is weird. North Carolina, Max got all those recruits and they get blasted by South Carolina, and Sam Howell goes out with a losing record in his senior year, or I think it's only his junior year. And then Matt Corral showed everybody why it's okay to opt out. Pick whatever you want to talk about and go for it.
Man, all 5 of those things are fantastic. That Rose Bowl was awesome. It really was. You know me, I'm not the biggest Ohio State person in the world. Actually, quite the opposite. They were fun. I'll admit it. They were fun to watch that night. They got down early. I love Utah. They were a lot of fun too. It stunk once the quarterback kind of got dinged up. It kind of turned at that point. But the backup comes in, the walk-on throws a touchdown pass, throws a ballsy pass to the back of the end zone, which was awesome. But Britton Covey, I believe his name, he ran back a kick. Like, it had everything, and it was back and forth. Jackson and Chiba was phenomenal. You think Ohio? Oh, I was talking to my neighbor who's a big Ohio State guy. He was saying once Garrett Williams and Chris Olave opted out, he said, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen." And then he looked at him. He looked at me. He goes, "But we still have number 11. As long as number 11's on the field, we're going to be just fine." And he was prophetic in that phrase. Notre Dame blowing the lead. I could just only imagine when they were up 14-0 before you could blink. I happened to be driving, so I was listening to the game. But they were up 14-0. Literally, the announcers were laughing on the air about just how easy it was. Oklahoma State went 3 and out their first 4 or 5 drives, and it did not look good. And then I get back to the hotel and they're losing, and I was just like, what the heck happened there? So yeah, you just, unfortunately, as a Notre Dame guy, I'd love to hear Palk's information, his opinion on it, because you get to the pinnacle and then you just can't even climb much further, for lack of a better analogy. Oregon, Oklahoma with Caleb Williams opting out, and there's really strong reports right now that he's not coming back, especially as soon as Caleb Williams, the ink wasn't even, I don't think he was officially in the portal before Dylan Gabriel switched his allegiance from UCLA to Oklahoma. So does he even have a spot? I know he's probably better than Gabriel, but does he even have a spot available for him at Oklahoma? So it'll be interesting. They may trade spots. I heard Caleb Williams may go to UCLA. Auburn is another one. I heard somebody said Georgia, and they were like, no chance. North Carolina, I'm almost done. North Carolina blasted by South Carolina. Why do recruits want to go play for that defense? Did they even play? Dre Bly must be a heck of a recruiter, because that it doesn't translate onto the field. They were just atrocious. And poor Matt Corral. Thankfully, it's just a sprain at Ole Miss, but the Twitter machine certainly ramped up that night when he went down with apparent knee injury. Thankfully, it's just a sprain, so he should be okay. And it was a lot of fun, man.
I was going to say, sorry, Case. John Chancey said that's all Ohio State needs is more wide receivers. Couldn't agree.
When you have arguably the best receiver in the country playing at Alabama, and he couldn't get on the field at Ohio State, just says it speaks volumes of it. And it's just a wealth of riches up there in Columbus. And hats off to Brian Hartline, because he just gets them and coaches them up, and they're ridiculous. But notice who's missing from this. There was a battle a couple years ago between Ohio State and Clemson for number 4, Julian Fleming. Kind of lost in the mix. I think he's going to be a junior next year, and you really don't hear about him much at all. He's on the field, but he doesn't really make a lot of catches. He's not really a difference maker. I know he's a former 5-star guy. We could use him.
Yeah, I was going to say, Clemson is taking transfers apparently now, making offers. We've seen a couple offers go out, so could certainly use one in the wide receiver room. I do want to say about Caleb Williams, what you said makes a whole lot of sense, because why would Dylan Gabriel, would he transfer just on the chance that Caleb Williams isn't going to come back? He's got some more information than you and I have, is what I'm saying, that Caleb Williams is gone from Oklahoma. So that's
gone. Gone are the days of guys competing anymore. Like, they don't really come in and compete for roles unless you're a freshman. And when you're transferring, you think you're going to go in and get the job. I mean, I think besides maybe outside of Mackenzie Milton, who just really wanted to play on another team while his freakily mangled knee was trying to get back together. Like maybe him, but every other guy that's in the portal wants to play. They're not going in the portal to be a backup. Tyson Pumachan is not going in the portal to be a backup somewhere. He may go smaller level, but he's not going to. So I really don't believe Dylan Gabriel was, unless they told him you're coming to be the backup, and he said okay, which I
You
don't
could
think
start at
that's-
UCLA. Why go to Oklahoma and be a backup when you would be number one at UCLA under Chip Kelly? It just doesn't make sense. I think you're right. I think he knows that Caleb Williams isn't coming back to Oklahoma. Hey, the playoff games, I can be a little more succinct in those. Alabama, I knew it was over at the coin toss. Did you see the size difference between we got props. We got props. For folks on the podcast, Casey's holding up a pillow and taking a snooze. I knew it was over at the coin toss. I took a picture. It didn't come across on the TV copy, but the difference in size of those guys, I was like, yeah, this one's all over. This is not going to be close. In Georgia, I knew it was over before coin toss on that one. Two really sleepers of the Alabama-Cincinnati game was, not out of hand or whatever. It was a decent game. They hung in there. And I'm not one that's going to say Cincinnati doesn't belong. Even if they had gotten beaten 50-3, they had a season where they did everything they could. And, the way the dominoes fell, they should have been ranked number 4. On how you believe, who should be in the playoff, the best teams or the most deserving teams, I guess is one way to look at it. But that's not me to say Cincinnati shouldn't have been there. I mean, Clemson's lost a game just like that to Alabama too, the Kelly Bryant year, right? They couldn't do anything. They couldn't get 5 yards on offense. They're lucky if they ever got 5 yards in the series. So we've been there too. And that's what I said on the Twitter machine about Michigan. You wanted the playoffs, Michigan? You got the playoffs. Congratulations. What a beatdown. Your thoughts on the playoffs?
Yeah, and I did bring out the pillow because that's how it felt. It was New Year's Eve. I was so excited just to hopefully have a competitive game. And my thoughts that I said last week was I thought that the Alabama game was going to be over by halftime. Looking back, it was, but at least the score looked a little bit closer than it was, and the game was a little bit more exciting. Hindsight being 2020, I thought the Michigan had a chance. I just thought the way that they ran the ball, but Georgia would put that to bed very early, and that game was literally a snoozer. I literally just made it to the. I'm saying literally a lot, but I literally just made it to the end of the game, and pretty much, it was the cure for insomnia. It was just not a good game, and coming, I guess the next day was the really good game. So it kind of made me forget about the playoff games, but not excited about the championship game at all. But of course, I'll watch because I love college football.
Well, you're rooting for Alabama, according to what you said last week. You're a big
100%
Alabama fan. Me too, by the way. Just can't deal with Georgia right now. And speaking of which, we're going to make our predictions. Okay, I came in last, so I'll go first. I came in last during the regular season, so I'll go first. I'm getting 3 points. I'm taking Alabama. It's going to be hard to beat Georgia twice, but if anybody can do it, it's Nick Saban. And I don't even have to do that. I'm getting 3 points, so I'm expecting a close game, and I'll take the 3 points. John Chancey says if Georgia wins the championship, they will be insufferable. Most of them already are, Chancey. But I live in Texas, so I'm going to take Alabama 3 points against Fed. I think Georgia may win the game, and that's going to make me sad because a lot of jokes will go away, with Georgia winning the first championship since 1980. But I'm an Alabama fan Monday night, and much like you, I never, ever thought I'd say that. But roll Tide. Who you got, Case?
Yeah, I'm doing the same as you. We're going to be very, very boring show. I just can't pull for Georgia. I think it's a kid from Jersey that didn't really understand the rivalry, still may not understand it nearly as well. But I just, having been around those folks, and I have friends that are grads who are fine, who are wonderful. Locks, obviously, he works with a few himself, and they're good guys. But man, I just don't want to hear them talking about it. I don't want to hear the people that live local to me here talk about it, because they literally have grown men barking at other people while they're at games. So next time I go to a Georgia game, I'm going to bring dog biscuits and just throw them at them. But I'm taking the 3 points in Alabama as well. I know it's tough, like you said, to beat a team twice. I think that first game really wasn't close, in my opinion. So I think 3 points, you're getting 3 points. Yeah, I mean, I truly believe that even if it's closer, I still believe Alabama pulls it out. I still believe a Mechie-less Alabama pulls it out. That Brian Robinson kid, woo boy! If that's how I knew the playoff was over. The first game, Alabama Cincinnati, when they didn't pass the ball that first drive, and they gave him the ball 10 straight times. I looked at my wife and I said, "This game's not going to be close." And she said, "How do you know?" I said, "They haven't even thrown it yet. They didn't need to." And if they can do that, I know Georgia's better. I understand their linebackers are fantastic. I know Jordan Davis. I understand that. But if you get Brian Robinson on the edge against a certain number 11 who really doesn't like to tackle in big games, they may be just fine.
Yeah, I think they threw that touchdown pass on our first drive because they got bored. Like, we could give it to Robinson again, but let's do something else. Let's have some fun. Let's throw a pass, see what happens. Oh, touchdown! Yeah, it was pretty telling. So pretty telling. Okay, we're big time now, Casey. Not only did we have new intro music that I screwed up, but we have guest picker on this show, just like game day. And I don't know if anybody knows this guest picker, but this guest picker sometimes frustrates me and you, but here he is.
It's pretty good. All right, this thing shiny for the people. The champ is here. That's right. Remember me? You thought I was gone, didn't you? Not so fast. One game left. And before we get into the last game, the last pick, the pick of all picks, the championship game, I give a shout out to Clemson Tigers, my coach, Dabo Sweeney. Very proud of him for getting a bucket of Cheez-Its dumped on his head as opposed to a bucket of Duke's mayonnaise that shall live in infamy forever. Have fun with that, Shane Beamer. That might have been a bad look, the mayonnaise on the head thing. As much as I like mayo, don't get me wrong. Anyway, big championship game coming up. I know the guys, they're probably thinking, here he goes with his SEC rant and how excited he is with, his league, both teams getting in. Well, yeah, you're right. I'm excited. Yeah, got to represent. Shirt's on always. It's my undershirt. I always wear it everywhere I go. What do you think? All right, so what we got? 3-point line for Georgia here, and the over-under is 52. The last time they played an SEC championship, over-under was 49, and Georgia was favored by 6. Why Georgia's favored again? You got me. Everybody down here is going crazy. I know friends that are flying from here all the way up to Indianapolis to watch this game. I think they're nuts. Whatever, teach its own. I mean, who would want to see the same game twice in 1 year, right? So, bound to the pick. I am going to go ahead this time and bet with my head, not my heart. Roll Tide, baby. Alabama, 42-28. See you guys.
I was planning on a short show tonight. Then he sent me that video. I was going, oh my God, just doubled the. I just asked for a pick. I didn't ask for your laundry to be done on the on this show. Locks checking in. The champion. Give him credit.
Well done.
He's the champ. It was very well done. Actually, it was better than I was expecting. And look who checked in, Case. Look at that guy in the video. He's a social media superstar. As I call him, the Twitterless Locks. He picked the same thing we did. So we're all going to win or we're all going to lose, one or the other. But a great video, Locks. Thanks for checking in. That was a lot of fun. I missed one by Chancey. Temporary tweeted that if Georgia wins, Clemson will have the longest winning streak in the nation. What? How bizarre!
6 games. It's true. Yeah.
That is crazy. That is crazy. I didn't even know that one. I didn't know that beret bomb as they were called. Okay. Thanks, Locks. Appreciate you checking in, bud. Enjoy your 7-month vacation until we start it all over again. What kind of job? I mean, we got to get Casey. You and I have to have those contract negotiations where you just kind of flitter in for a few months and then get 7 months off. I'm not sure how he arranged that contract, but it's pretty impressive. I
hope we're prorating his salary.
Yes, we are. We'll see 0 divided by 0. That's one of the first things I learned in math. I love the numbers. You know that. 0 divided by
70% of 0 is yes.
No doubt. Oh, over on seldomusedreserve.com, John Chansey put some words to paper. And, well, it's a good thing it wasn't put to paper because he'd be chopping down some trees. Chansey likes to write, and he does a great job at it. He wrote about opt-outs this week. So good deal for Chansey. Check it out on seldomusedreserve.com. As I mentioned earlier, I got something coming up tomorrow on the Clemson situation. I really believe they need a superstar quarterback. And it's one of the things you mentioned, Tiger commenter and earlier. It's one of the things he and I were texting and another guy yesterday, I think it was, and he said, well, you just need somebody to hand the ball off to. And I said, well, hell, DJ can do that. You need somebody not to throw interceptions on shovel passes, for one. And you need Clemson won because my belief is because they had quarterbacks who were dynamic, passing and throwing. That's what you need, a quarterback, not an NFL statue back there. And I wrote a little something about class, just a little bit. It didn't work out so well last night, so we'll leave that there. There's plenty on Hunter Renfro's 99 catches for over 1,000 yards for the walk-on grape holder. Hunter Renfro, what did he weigh? 168 pounds when he got to Clemson. Henry's return, and again, more to come from John Chansey. He does a great job. John, we appreciate you. I certainly appreciate you, and I'm going to get that stuff in the mail to you. No chopping beef this week, beef?
I'm traveling tomorrow for work, so if I can get there in time, maybe. But right now, I would say very, very slim chance. But next week, baseball preview. I don't know if people out there realize, but we are world renowned with our baseball previews. Next week, baseball preview. I know it's early, but
it's kind of interesting that you're going to have a baseball preview and we may not have baseball. So
that's right. It's going to be a short show.
Priorities. Yeah. I was telling Parker, and I may have said this last week, but I said, man, I can't wait to go, because usually we see a few minor league games. We picked somebody. We went to Corpus one year and saw South Pier and Zach Irwin. We've seen the Yankees farm team in Charleston, So I said, well, this year let's go to Sugarland out there with Aunt Melissa. And he said, yeah, that may be the only baseball we see this year, which is really, really depressing.
They're going to play.
Locke said that's the point. The biggest baseball fan there is. Beef, tell the people thanks. Let's get out of here and enjoy our off season.
Thanks to everyone in Seldom News Reserve College Football Discussion Facebook group, especially Nelson Wilhite for all his help, John Chansey for all his words and work on seldomnewsreserve.com, Uncle John McGee as always, everyone on Seldom News Reserve for Sligo Podcast, and each and every one of you who likes, listens, and shares and participates. I mess that up every week. On behalf of not here, Zach Locks Parker and Marty Seldom News Reserve Coleman, I am Casey the Beef Creek, and thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you when we see you right here on Sligo.
It's a good thing I don't pay Chansey by the word.
I think that sounds pretty good.